中美贸易摩擦近期出现了缓和的迹象。美国驻华大使布兰斯塔德在周二接受本台专访时表示，对两国近期间的沟通表示乐观，也希望双方可以尽早达成协议，避免发生贸易战。而从长期看，他认为中美或可以在中国经济结构调整、环境治理等领域取得更多的合作机会，这也会有助于减少美国对华贸易赤字。
Okay, so Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much for taking some time to do the interview because I think it's a critical moment for the two countries' trade relations. So firstly, let me ask you, what is your comment about the recent negotiations happening between Vice Premier Liu He and Secretary of Treasury, Mr. Mnuchin? Are you positive about these negotiations?
Well, I think it's encouraging. I know that Liu He met with Mnuchin in Davos. Yes. He also recently, right before the National
Congress,
National Party Congress, also National People's Congress, went to Washington D.C. and they have had further communications. So I think it's really important that we understand each other's position and get more clarification. And we have some time here to see what kind of adjustments and changes can be made in trade. I know that President Trump feels very strongly that the trade deficit has grown and grown and grown, and not enough has been done in the past. He wants to see action, and I know that Secretary Mnuchin and others in the administration, like Lighthizer, are looking into some of these issues involving things like requiring joint ventures or mandatory transfer of technology, intellectual property not being adequately protected. These are longstanding issues that the United States feels strongly needs to be resolved, and I'm hopeful that we'll see progress.
Words saying that Secretary Mnuchin might be coming to Beijing for a visit. So do you have some update on this?
I don't. I do know that, and I met with him when I was back in Washington, D.C. myself, and I know that he has built a good relationship with Liu He, and Liu He is very close with President Xi Jinping. Also, I think the chemistry between President Trump and President Xi Jinping has been good. They've had 3 meetings. They've had many telephone conversations. I think if the two leaders really are committed to resolving these difficult trade issues, hopefully we can see progress occur between our two countries.
So at this moment, do you think that the two sides will be able to reach a deal to avoid the raising tariff?
Well, you know, President Trump many years ago wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. So I think he's always willing to make a deal if he feels it's in the interests of the American workers and the American people. And I'm very hopeful that the discussions and the frank exchanges that are going on today will lead to something that will be constructive and helpful and benefit the Chinese consumer as well as American workers.
I think it would be a win-win thing. Yeah. But from the U.S. perspective, what does the U.S. want the most from the deal?
Well, that's a complicated question. These are issues that have been long-standing. I know some of these issues really involve access to the Chinese market and the fact that American companies have not been able to have that access, or they've required to have a joint venture partner or have less than majority ownership. Also, they've been concerned about having their intellectual property stolen. So these are critical issues that need to be resolved. One example is on the reciprocity is China has a 25% tariff on automobiles, and we only have a 2.5% tariff on automobiles in the United States. So that's not balanced. We have a similar situation with cloud computing. Chinese companies can compete in the United States, but American companies are excluded from this market when it comes to cloud computing. So these are some of the specific issues that we need to see resolved.
So at this moment, do you think a trade war is still possible?
Well, it's always possible, but I think it's important that we work together and look at ways that we can avoid conflicts and how we can resolve these differences. And so that's why the ongoing discussion is critically important, and we'll see where it goes, but I'm one that's kind of an optimist and hopeful that we can see these issues resolved in a way that really does benefit both countries. And especially, we have some really great American pharmaceuticals and medical devices, as well as safe quality food that can really help. As China's got a growing middle class, there's a need to provide for the health and well-being of those people, and at the same time reduce the trade deficit. That would make it a win-win situation. That's what I'm hopeful.
But in the long run, what do you think the two sides should do to really solve this trade imbalance?
Well, I think, first of all, we need to, instead of seeing the trade deficit grow every year, we need to see it start to shrink. And there's a real need, for instance, pollution. China is now, I think, recognizing the need to convert more from coal for heating to LNG. America has a large supply of that can meet the needs here. Another area in the United States, we eliminated MTBE as a octane enhancer for gasoline because it polluted our groundwater and our soil. There's a huge problem with that here in China. China wants to go to 10% ethanol by the year, and that will reduce air pollution. So that's good for the health and well-being of the people here, and it also would increase American exports of ethanol. Right now there's a 30% tariff in China on ethanol. A reduction or elimination of that tariff, I think, would be beneficial to the health and well-being of the Chinese people, as well as to American farmers that produce the corn that goes into ethanol.
But like you just said, a trade war is possible at any time, so we have to think about the worst case scenario. So if a trade war does happen, what would you worry the most?
Well, I guess my hope is that we can find a ways to avoid the worst case situation, because it really would hurt both sides. It would hurt the Chinese consumer, it would hurt the American farmer and the American worker. So we don't want to see that happen. We instead want to look at what are constructive alternatives that can address these issues. But I think the president feels strongly that they've been ignored too long, and we need to see action, and we need to see it happen in the near future, not 3 or 5 years from now.
But we have seen some advisors to the Chinese government has pointed out that if the trade war is going to happen, that China should fight back by restricting the import of U.S. soybeans, because this is the weakest link of U.S. economy. I know that you are from Iowa, that you have been the governor of Iowa for a long time. So what do you think of this issue? Would that be a huge impact on U.S. economy?
Well, China's got a growing middle class and a need for more protein. Soybeans are a great source of protein for both feed for livestock like pork, and also for tofu and other food items. So this would be something that would hurt the Chinese consumers as well as the American farmer. So I think we should try to find ways that we can avoid things that would be harmful to both sides. And that's the reason why I want to look at constructive alternatives and things that can really address the root cause of the deficit. And that's why I think the idea of addressing these issues about access to the Chinese marketplace would make a real difference and could reduce the trade deficit while benefiting the Chinese consumer at the same time.
Okay, that's all for our questions today, and thank you very much. And I do hope there will be the best case scenario.
Well, let's hope for, and you know, I'm really honored and proud to be the American ambassador here, be an old friend of Xi Jinping, as well as a strong supporter of President Trump, and I hope we can work together to resolve these critical issues that are important to both of our countries, and especially to our people.